Welcome to Marketing Matters with WEO Media. I am so honored to have as our guest Bill Caskey. You probably don't recognize this name in the dental world. We're going to change that, but Bill is one of the most respected sales trainers and coaches in the industry today. I came to know him through my colleague, and because I am such a huge Arbinger fan, I recognized Bill's approach as a very, what I refer to in the Arbinger circles as a very outward mindset individual. And we'll explain a little more about that here in a minute. So, Bill, thank you for joining us, for spending some time. This is such an honor.
Oh, well, I'm glad to be here, Joseph. I know this has been a long time coming, and I can't wait to get going. So I appreciate you having me on.
This is great. Let me embarrass you by talking a little of who you are, so that our listeners have an appreciation for Bill Caskey. You're no stranger to podcasting, so forgive me if I'm just a little intimidated here. We're talking 10 years guest appearing on podcasts. You have 2 podcasts of your own. The Advanced Selling podcast, which is in the top 50 marketing shows on Apple, and the Bill Caskey podcast alone. You have authored several books. Same Game, New Rules, Rewire the Sales Mind, The Sales Playbook, Email It, Seller's Guide to Emails at Work. I tell you, Bill, that's a huge contribution to an industry that is still, in my opinion, looking to get it right and trying to figure out what the best approach is to grow. And so when we had an opportunity to talk, I was impressed with the fact that you have an appreciation for in the dental world, or in medical and dental, the term sales is very different in our circle than perhaps in other places that you are most appreciated. I would love to explore how the word sales, particularly in the dental industry, needs some clarification and definition. And for a long time, having been in this industry for now over 30 years, I can tell you that we're really uncomfortable with that term because it is medical based. At the same time, the individuals that are answering the phone in a dental office are acting in a very real, significant sales role that they often have not been trained in. Although they have been trained in an office setting and they know how to answer the phone in general, the responsibility to schedule that patient, to convert that interested caller into a booked appointment in which they are committed to come to their appointment and receive dentistry, it begins there. And then there are probably many other layers there, Bill, where even after we've done all that we can, having gotten that patient in the office, then there's other layers of sales, because that doctor has to communicate in a way that patient wants to do the treatment that dentist wants to do for them. So there's so many layers here, and I'd just like to take this from the top and tell us about how you see that term and how dentistry should probably consider the term sales on the level that may be most productive.
I think the best way to get into this is to retell or tell a story, just a 2-minute story about how I got started in all this, because everything you're saying is exactly how I felt when I was 27 years old. So let me tell you that story. I was selling for a Caterpillar dealer, McAllister Machinery in Indianapolis, and I'd been in it for a couple of years. I got out of college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was partying. I was playing basketball, partying a little bit too much, and I was just average in everything. I was pretty good at basketball, but that didn't really pay many bills. So one night I had lost 3 deals in one day. It was total about $1 million of machinery. And these are deals that everybody was counting on, and especially me, because I had told them to count on it, because, it's a sure thing. And I lost all 3. I was 0 for 3. And so I had that come to Jesus meeting on the side of my bed one night, and I assumed Jesus was in the room. I don't know. I didn't see him. But the idea there was I had to make a decision. Is this really what I'm cut out for? Because I wasn't good at it. Average would have been overstating it. I was mediocre at it. And so I decided at that time, if I had nothing else planned to do, and so I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, really create a successful career, I've got to figure it out. And I didn't get any coaching. That was before anybody had coaches and trainers, and there was no internet. All there were albums and cassette tapes. And so I bought everything I could on the subject from all the greats, Tracy and Robbins and all those guys. And it always felt to me like they were trying to teach me how to be a clown. They were trying to teach me how to parade in front of the prospect and do the dance and say all the right things and be nice and shake hands and laugh at their stupid jokes and all that stuff. And I always felt like, well, that's not me. It's not me. So in 1990 something, I started to really think about, well, what is sales? What is it really? And I iterated. I left that company and I joined a couple other, but I eventually went off on my own to train salespeople because I had enough content that I wanted to change the sales game. And so I saw this as 3 things. The problem I was facing is the problem that every salesperson faces, whether you think you're in sales or not. And that is your mind is wrong, your message is wrong, and your methods are wrong. Your mind, your message, and your methods. And we won't talk so much today about message, but I do think we should start with mindset. Because I thought sales was a game of persuasion and convincing. And as I got into it deeper, I realized that's not it at all. There should never be any convincing in sales. And so I'm going to redefine sales. People can take notes here, and I'll say it a couple times so they can write it down. Sales is the creation of an environment where the truth can be revealed. It's the creation of an environment where the truth from the patient and from me, both of us feel comfortable enough, it's safe enough, we have a safe atmosphere, there's no pressure to buy or not to buy. It's a safe environment where 2 people can come together. The patient or prospect can tell me what their issues are, what they're trying to accomplish, what would be a perfect outcome. I can share then based on that what my solution could be. I'll proclaim the offer and the solution in a cohesive way. And we can decide whether we want to move forward or not, again, with no pressure. Because once you introduce pressure, like the salesperson that's what people hate about sales, is it feels like a pressure game, right?
That's right.
Well, it shouldn't be. If you feel like you're putting pressure on the patient to do something, you're not thinking about it in the right way. That's a dead giveaway that you haven't learned what I'm going to teach you and Joseph and I are going to talk about today. So, creating the environment where 2 people can come together, we can unveil truth, we can reveal the truth about what our issues are, what our pricing is, what our problems are, and we can decide together if this makes logical and emotional sense. And once you change that, and by the way, a lot of our clients are what I call accidental salespeople. They're engineers, lawyers, doctors, advisors, subject matter experts, consultants. Most people don't even want to be in sales. They don't even like the word, like you say. But if we can redefine it and collect our mindset around what the proper way to be in the sales process, you won't ever think you're in sales, and you'll still be extremely successful at proclaiming offers and generating new patients.
I love that definition. Creating that environment where the truth can be revealed. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's not hard to do. This is not like going back to dental school. I mean, you can learn that. I'm going to give you some things here today that you can start the process. But, I've got in the mindset area, I've got two what I will call universal principles. Number one is the patient or the prospect, I'm using those 2 terms interchangeably,
Sure.
will always do what's in their perceived self-interest at that time. People will always do what they consider is in their self-interest, not in your interest, but in their interest. And so our goal is to understand what their interest is. what are you thinking about? You're getting ready to spend $5,000 on whatever. Tell me a little bit about what you're thinking. What's your interest in this? Just asking those simple questions will help you determine what is their self-interest. So I want you to work with the universal law rather than working against it. So many salespeople work against that. They want to do what's in their best interest, not what's in the prospects. And so that's number one, is what's in their best interest. The second thing is humans will always avoid the inevitable if they believe there's pain attached to the inevitable. So it's the bury my head in the sand thing. I've talked to sales VPs and owners of companies who are literally about ready to go out of business because they can't generate more income or more revenue, and they refuse to look at it. They don't want to. I mean, even after I've had conversation, they refuse to do anything because they have their head in the sand. And so I have found that humans typically do that, and your patients will do that. They will avoid the inevitable because it's easier to remain status quo than change. Now, if there's pain involved, and I mean physical pain here, that changes things a little bit.
Sure.
It changes things.
But that's very applicable to dentistry, because there is a fear factor in dentistry that I think we have tried to recognize, but I think we've also minimized it more than we probably should have. And so you're speaking our language.
Yeah, I think one. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't agree that I'm speaking your language, but yeah, I think that applies anywhere. You're talking about physical pain here a little bit, or the pain of cutting a check, writing a check, the pain of coming back to the office 4 times in the next 6 weeks for 2 hours, or whatever it is. There's always pain that will stop them, and there's always pain that will propel them. So there's always a headwind and a tailwind in sales when you're trying to convert somebody, or convert them into getting the treatment, buying the treatment. So the mindset is vital. It's important. I also have a rule that is that the more detached from the outcome you are, the better you will be in the process. So if a patient comes in, and let's say that you're talking to them about, what would be an example? Give me, so I'm not saying the wrong words.
So let's say a patient has been looking at implants, dental implants.
Okay.
And they know they're expensive. They don't really, they're shopping around. They just haven't found maybe the right place, and they don't know if they want to spend that much money. They don't want to be taken advantage of. But that's often a very big ticket item.
It is.
We're not talking about just $5,000. There's your scenario.
Yeah. So you don't want to miss too many of those, because it takes a lot of $500 crowns to equal a 25, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So here's how I always start. I always recommend people start with a conversation with a prospect by saying, look, we're here to talk today about implants. They're not cheap. So what I would like to do today is understand what you're thinking. Mm-hmm. Why are you interested? Why are you considering them? What happens if you do nothing? Because that's always an option, sir, to do nothing and to live with the status quo. I wouldn't say live with the pain. I would say live with the status quo, because that is an option, isn't it? I mean, they might be in tremendous pain and still want to live with the status quo.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit. I'll share with you everything I can about what the process looks like, how it works, what's going to be required of you if we decide to do this, and you can share with me any kind of reluctance or hesitancy you have. And then at the end, we can decide if we want to proceed and either do it or deliver the pricing or whatever that next step is.
Sure.
So I'm doing what's called the upfront agreement, which is just, let's make people feel comfortable and safe in our presence. And if we can do that, then the guards go down, because what you just described is maybe they've been to 2 or 3 other dental practices and they haven't bought. And so now the guard's up. It's like, okay, they're going to try to pitch me these implants. No, I'm not. I'm going to understand your plight and your circumstances. I'm going to share with you what it looks like if you want to solve this problem. And at the end of the day, guess what? Your decision, not mine. Your teeth, not mine. I find people will be more likely to buy if they feel safe than if they feel coerced. Once coercion enters into the picture, everything gets toxic. because it's easier for me to say no when I'm feeling coerced. It's like our political, messy political debates. It's like everybody always feels coerced because that's what they're trying to do to us. Coerce them to vote for them, coerce them to give us money, coerce. It's one big exercise in coercion. So we're used to that. So if your patient comes into your practice and doesn't get that, they're going to be much more open to your solution than if they have to walk around with their hands up because they're afraid of being sold to. And I know you will say, well, I never try to sell them. No, but once pressure enters into it, that's what they feel. One thing I would say is, think about the things that you need to know before you go through all the process of the testing and the lab work and all that, because I don't want you to spend a lot of time on things that on 10% of the deals that go. That's 90% of your time is wasted, or whatever the percentage is. So think about all the things that you need to have a conversation about. One is money. I mean, you may not know exactly what it costs before you do the lab work, but you probably kind of have an idea, just a rough idea. And so that would be something, if that's a stumbling block later in the process, I would rather get it out up front and be able to control that conversation rather than at the end where you say it's $35,000 and the guy says, well, I thought it was going to be 12. I'm not going to do this. I don't have 35,000, whatever. That way, it could be that someone says, it's $35,000? No way. In which case you say, God bless you. I'll see you later. If it ever becomes realistic for you to do, we'd love to have you back. That way I've not wasted hours and hours of labor and then trying to pitch him at the end. I just don't want to do that. And I know that may sound crass about money, but if it's a stumbling block, it's your job to bring it up.
I've heard many consultants take the approach of communicating to the patient that we do everything we can to help make dentistry affordable. And there are a number of things we can do. But we often still wait until the end to give that whole discussion. And by then, we've missed that upfront agreement.
Well, I was going to say, I'm sure there's all different ways for them. They don't have to bring in, $20 bills of cash. There's all sorts of different ways to pay and to installment plans and things like that. But I think you can say that after you've said the price. Now, look, the fact is that doesn't mean $35,000 when you come in. We can figure out a way to plan this out. There's some companies that do this kind of financing that are very reputable. They're very good. So, but what you're doing there is you're saying to the patient, I'm not afraid to talk about money here. And by getting it out up front, they will go back home and justify it in their mind. And all you need is them to work through that a little bit. You're not going to be able to force them to it. You just say, look, it's $35,000. There's lots of different ways to do it. We've got one company, it's about $700 a month for 2 years or whatever. So I want you, if that sounds reasonable, I want you to put the how we're going to get that out of the equation, and let's focus on you and your problem. But we've done it and we've got it out there, and so now there's no surprises. I just don't want a surprise at the end.
You mentioned 3 M's. Mindset, followed by
message, and method. And
we've been talking a little bit about the method here, but let's go back to the message.
Yeah, the mindset is all the things that happen inside you. It's not their mindset, it's your mindset. How are you seeing this? Because if you see yourself as trying to convince somebody to buy, that's not a good mindset. So I gave you a couple here today to think about. The message is, how do you communicate the message of value to your patient? The best way I have found to communicate it is to understand the problem that they're looking to solve and understand the destination once they get that problem solved. They'll be able to eat items that they can't eat now. They'll live a life pain-free. When they smile, their smile is going to be radiant, or whatever those destination points are. Mm-hmm. I think if we miss those and we get too wrapped up in the process and the procedure and first assist tests, and then there's that test and it's a little prick and we'll put some Novocaine in, that people don't want to hear that. They want to know, what's life going to be like after I spend the $35,000? or get this problem solved. So I think any kind of messaging, you need to be crystal clear. I call it the offer. Because it really is an offer. At some point, you're going to offer them to solve their problem for a fee. I don't just want it to feel like, well, you're going to spend $35,000 and we're going to put you under for 6 weeks and 4 hours. I need to know, what's the payoff here? What's the destination we're trying to get to? So when I say messaging, I mean it's how do we position this solution, to get ready to do this solution? How do we position it? Why do other people get this solution? And what's the payoff for them if they take advantage of this? And those are all messaging components. And people aren't good at this. And the reason is, Joseph, is because we traipse around all of our life for 40, 50, 60 years. We traipse around looking at everything from our vantage point. We see everything through our own eyes. Now what I'm telling you to do is pull your own eyes out of it. You've got to see this problem through the prospect's or through the patient's eyes. And that's hard to do. It sounds so simple, but it's hard to do because you really don't know what's going on inside their eyes or inside their mind. That's why I want to ask those questions up front. But we as a profession, I don't care what part of marketing or sales or patient care you're in, we have to understand what's going on through the eyes of the customer. Hard to do, but it's a must. It's a must do.
Wow, there's so many directions we could go here, because what we're talking about in general applies to both the front desk receptionist who's answering the phone, as well as the dentist himself, who ultimately will deliver the treatment in a way that they will or will not accept. It's very difficult, based on my experience, for a dentist to simply come in as the clinician, as the clinical expert and say, this is what you need, have a good day, and expect someone else in his office to come in and close that deal. And yet I've seen consultants teach that that is the way it should be done. I don't understand that myself because, in my opinion, it's the doctor that needs to have that relationship with the patient. But you're also talking about an individual who didn't go to dental school because they had mastered people skills.
That's right.
Let's talk about that.
Nor do I want them to. Nor do we want them. If they're going to be, we're going to be choosy about the kind of dentist. We don't really care about the people skills. We want them to be a good technician. But when you're trying to sell somebody and persuade them that they should be doing something, you have to have a little bit of that. So what you're saying is that in the ideal world, the assistant walks the patient through what we're talking about, and then the dentist comes in for the close, or no?
No, it's different in every office. It's generally not the clinical assistant, but it may be a patient coordinator who handles a lot of that patient escorting, building that relationship, facilitating the doctor relationship with that patient. That can work effectively. But ultimately, I think what we often miss out on in this respect is that doctor establishing a relationship early on in what this relationship might look like, which is what you described as that upfront agreement. And then they have some place to go once the records are collected and there's a diagnosis to be made or a treatment plan to be presented. Yeah. Now let's
let me just say one more thing, and then we'll jump to the next one.
Please.
I think if in fact you're in a practice where somebody, a coordinator or somebody, is kind of laying out, this is what it looks like, this is what it costs, this is all the details of it, and then the doctor comes into the patient, I think it's good for the doctor to say, look, I know you probably went through with Evelyn all of the details. So tell me, I'm sure you probably have a couple of questions. Ask me anything you want. I'm here as the sounding board. Anything you want. Tell me where you are mentally. Are you feeling like that's the right thing to do? Or are you like, no, for the right time? Just tell me. Just find out where they are. Here's the rule, and then we can move on to another topic, is you have to meet the customer where they are. Meet the patient where they are. Unfortunately, we don't spend nearly enough time in any profession understanding where they are. So if a VP of sales calls me and says, "Hey, I want you to come in and work with my sales team for 3 months or a year or whatever," I have to find out, well, where are they? Have they had other people in? Have they tried anything on their own that hasn't worked or has worked? What's the state of the union here? What's the state of morale? Are people up? Are people down? I want to understand where they are in that moment before I start to move them my way or move them out. I could be moving them out of the funnel or into the funnel further. But we sometimes, and I think that's a great role for the doctor to play, is kind of finding out where they are. Yeah, tell me where. But it's not a convince role. It's just an informational role.
No, that really applies to dentistry. That conversation needs to happen probably multiple times. And let's take it from the top with that individual who's answering the phone and has no idea who's on that other end. Whether it's a hygiene patient just wanting to schedule their cleaning and they're an existing patient, or if it's someone who is responding to an ad or responding to something they saw or heard that was marketing in general, and it was enough to pick up the phone, but they have no idea where to take it from there.
Yeah,
let's a great how the mind, message, and method might apply to someone picking up the phone to a prospect that may or may not be someone they're prepared to talk to.
Yeah. So I still like the upfront agreement there. So let's say I'm the administrator or whoever's answering the phone, and somebody calls and starts asking questions. I would always say to them, look, is it okay if I ask you some questions about what you're experiencing here and what you're trying to accomplish, what your goals are, and then I'll be able to send you to the right person or go down the right path to help serve you. I always feel this is all about serving our patients and our clients. Yes. It's all about service. If we send them somewhere and they're like, what are we doing here? That's not what I said. It's because we didn't do a good job up front of meeting them where they are. So right. I like that upfront agreement. Just look, tell me a little bit about what you're trying to accomplish. I want to serve you to the best of my ability, highest and best use. If I understand that, then I can make a recommendation of what the next steps are. And people always say yes to that.
They do. That would make sense. That would make total sense.
They feel heard. They feel heard, yeah.
They feel heard. You've acknowledged that they have called for a reason and that they are looking for something.
That's right.
Without going right into what does your schedule look like? Let's just get you in. I'm not ready for. I may not be ready for that. Right.
Right. Oh, whoa, yeah. But what might happen there, and then we can move on, is sometimes that it's over at that point. And what I mean is it's over. I mean in a positive way. Once you do that, and that patient says to themselves, "I'm in the right place. I'm in the right place here. I'm so glad I called you." We get this all the time from our clients who do this upfront agreement, and they say customers love it. It's like, I knew I was in the right place the first meeting when you said, look, I don't know if I can help. Let's get together. Let's talk and let's decide I knew I was in the right. So people are looking for the right fit. And the better you are in communicating your value or communicating the procedures, it could be that at that moment it's over. You might screw it up later, but sure. the patient is they're going head first for it because of how you've treated them.
Bill, that puts tremendous weight on how that phone is answered in an office that is looking for new patients, looking to fill the schedule with as many inbound potential prospects as possible. And if they don't answer the phone, you're missing out on that opportunity.
They'll call somebody else.
They'll just keep calling. Yeah. You will have missed because they're interested in finding a solution to their problem, and you weren't available. And
that's right.
If they can bond, you're describing this emotional, this individual personal connection that potential patient could have and should have with the person that answers the phone on behalf of that practice.
Yeah.
And if they do it right, they could literally come into the practice, walking into the practice saying, I already know I'm where I want to be because I spoke to Sally at the front. and I know she's going to take good care of me because I trust Sally,
Yeah.
and the way Sally described this practice and why she believes in this doctor.
That's right. That's right. It's a fine edge. It's a what do you call it? A game of inches. I say sometimes if you're busy and the phone's ringing, don't let it go to voicemail. If you have something you're in the middle of, pick it up. Say, hey, I'm really glad you called. Is it okay if I call you back in 15 minutes? I want to talk to you. I'm in the middle of a couple of things. I want to devote full attention. Call them back. They would rather hear that than you just not answer the phone and not call them back for 3 days. Then they're like, well, they're not that interested in me. So there's all different ways to handle that.
In your material, I've heard you use the word leverage in a way that is very uncharacteristic of what we think of when we think of the word leverage in sales or in any type of a relationship. Would you help me help our listeners redefine what you mean by leverage in the sales process?
Yeah, leverage is it's an old term. I'm trying to reinvent it here a little bit. It's the whole Archimedes lever where there's down force and then there's up force, and the idea of leverage is to use what you have to the best of your ability to get the outcomes that will please you. So, one example of using leverage, and this may not fit for you, but I'm just thinking about this, is if a dentist has a lot of questions that they get from patients about a certain procedure, then they can sit for 30 minutes and answer those questions to everybody that comes in asking them. And if there's 100 people a year, they're spending 500 hours doing that, or 100 hours, or they can shoot a video and put it on their website and say, people who are interested in implants typically have 10 questions. Before you come in next week, I'm going to send you a video. And in that video, the doctor himself actually explains the situation, what to expect. You're leveraging technology there to save you time in the sales process or in the patient process.
Okay.
Now that you might say, oh, that's not really a good example, but it is, because I'm leveraging the use of a technology to keep me from having to do the same thing over and over and over for years. And I'll bet you that if you're listening to this and you're an administrator, there's probably a dozen things that you do over and over and over with patients that could be solved with one video posted on your website, so that way next time somebody has a question, even something as simple as a doctor's welcoming to the practice. That could be a video where the doctor shoots, say, hey, I'm glad you came in. I know you saw an ad or came in. We're here to serve you. We're open 7 to 8. And my practice I've been here for 20 years. And now when that patient gets there, they feel like they know that dude or that lady. They feel like they know him because the doctor took time to create a 5-minute video. He did it once, but he's using it hundreds of times. And that's an example of leverage. Which
is a completely different definition, because when I hear the word leverage, I go right back to your big no-no, and that's coercion.
Yeah.
A salesperson, a sales professional who uses the word leverage or thinks of the word as leverage is to have one up on someone else in order to coerce them to getting what they want and making quota.
Yeah. In the pure sense or definition of the word, that is not what it means, but that's what it's come to mean because we think about leveraging financial instruments, leveraging your house, and usually it's not a positive connotation when you hear it that way. Yeah. But I use it as a positive way to reduce the amount of repetitive tasks that you do and use your time and your technology so that you can do that call one time rather than 300 times. That's ultimate leverage.
Well, you've opened Pandora's box there a bit for us in marketing, because we teach a lot about the importance of video, not just from a personal perspective of helping that patient perhaps bond with or save the doctor time in a repetitive activity, but video is an incredible tool for enhancing our SEO or search engine optimization. And dentistry has been slow to catch on to this. Other companies understand how to, again, using the term in the right way, leverage video in a way that might save them time, but the other upside of that video is that you're able to extend yourself, maybe even enhance the upfront agreement in a way that you wouldn't even know, because you may not get that patient in the office to have that face-to-face conversation unless you can impress them on your website that you're someone they really want to talk to further, right? I see how that video in a number, and there's a number of ways we can use video.
Right.
That video does more than just maximize your time and reduce the repetitive stuff that you can spend time doing something someplace else. If it's done right, what we've learned through science and technology is that when an individual goes to a website, the most frequently clicked button or drop-down menu item is about us or about the doctor.
Yeah.
We know that's where they're going first. And so the problem is, Bill, is that we go there and we find a little picture of the doctor and his technical or historical accolades about his qualifications that only another dentist would understand. And they've missed an opportunity to really bond with that patient. How does that play into the sales process?
Especially if this is my first visit with this particular dentist, and maybe the people listening would say we have a page for new patients, and it's not a fill out this form and jump through these hoops. It's, hey, it's a welcome video from Dr. Smith, and it's a video, and go click on that, and now I see Dr. Smith talking to me in his nice way, and he's got his nice room, his nice white coat on, his stethoscope, and all his mask and everything. Yeah. And now I feel like, oh, so when I see him now, here's what I'm gonna say. Hey, I liked your video. And that's how it begins. Or the smart ass will say, hey, you look a lot older than you did in that video, But it's a bonding instrument. It's something that you can now take and you can move forward with. So I think leverage, I think if you think about it, there's a lot of different places in your practice you can use it.
That's great, Bill. Mind, message, method. How much time do you spend on method in your training if they get the mind and the message components of your training? Is that something you spend a lot of time on, or by the time you get there?
Yeah, the method we talked about a little bit is what's the method of converting that person who comes in and has interest to a paying and happy and satisfied patient? What's that method look like? And we talked a little bit. It's the upfront agreement. It's what kinds of questions are you going to ask them? I always tell, the high-paid professionals, they have a system for everything. And I've got a guy who probably earns $750,000 a year, and he's a frontline sales professional. But when you watch him work, you would never think he was a sales professional. You would just say, this dude really likes people. He likes to help people. Well, guess what he has? He has a Google Doc with the 10 questions that he insists that he asks every first meeting, because you can't leave it up to your own devices to remember these questions. So I would suggest it's a tangible outcome of this maybe, is make a list of the types of questions that on that first meeting, especially when there's a implant or some kind of major thing, what are the questions you're going to ask? And make it systematic so that everybody knows, did you ask these questions? Well, I asked the first 2, but then I didn't have time. No, we got to ask all of them. They don't have to be 10, could be 5, could be 7, whatever. But the process that you take them through should be documented in some way, not to make it scripty, but to make it so that it's worth following. If there's no process, Janet's going to do it different than Bill, and Bill's going to do it different than Joseph, and we're going to have everybody. And when Joseph can close these deals and nobody else can, we have no way of knowing. Is it because he's a better looking guy? Is it because he's just nicer? Is it because he takes them in and buys them a cup of coffee? We don't know. But if we have a process, now we can measure to the process.
The importance of the checklist. which would
Yeah.
really apply for that first time caller.
Yeah. True.
That's
Yeah.
got checklist all over it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
These are the important, critical questions we need to ask. I remember hearing someone say that the one that's asking the questions is the one in control. But that sounds like the old way of selling, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I've heard that before. Yeah. I the one asking the questions is the one who cares to know what the situation is that they're about ready to walk into and fix. That the questions come from a place of curiosity, not a place of manipulation.
Oh,
So the questions are, based on that. It's not questions like, if I could show you a way, would you give me your credit card today? That's not a question. Not a question.
that's a coercive method.
That's a coercive method, yeah. So the questions are just what do you want to know about them? What do you want to know about the problem they're facing? What do you want to know about how they want to live life once this thing is done?
Sure.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The money question. Do you have any idea what I wouldn't ask that probably, but there's a dozen questions that you would ask, and do you have to go through all of them? No, but if you don't have a list, you won't ever get through them, and so that's what I would recommend as part of the process is just understanding. You're in a sales people listening are in a sales process. It's not 6 months. It's pretty quick.
Yeah.
It's a couple of meetings, and it might even be we have this meeting and then I'll call you back in a couple of days, and because I'm sure you'll think of some other questions that you might have, and we'll attack those then. It could be something as simple as a 3-step process.
Sure. Bill, that really brings us full circle to why I have always loved your material over any other sales training I've ever seen, and that's because of what I refer to as that outward mindset. And from an Arbinger perspective, it's because you train individuals to see people as people, not as objects. Yeah. And historically in sales, we just feel like that's a necessary evil, that they're going to have to convert them to an object because they need to focus on the objective, and the objective is to make money, and to make money you've got to close the deal.
That's right.
And it's got coercion and leverage in all the wrong ways built into that, rather than seeing someone as a person and first and foremost trying to meet their needs in service. I heard you mention that word as a way of succeeding.
Yeah. Yeah.
If someone wants to invest more in training, and I believe this is so applicable to dentistry. If an office manager or a dental corporation wanted to reach out, what would be the best way to do that?
They can go to billcaskey.com, and on that page there are several opportunities to either buy a book or take part in one of our programs. We do a challenge every month called the $1 Million Seller Challenge, and it's a 5-day, 1 hour per day challenge where I go through all of this that we just went through, only at a much deeper level. But all that's available at billcaskey.com.
That would be so worth their investment. Bill, thank you for your time. We've really enjoyed having you.